Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Telemedia Online vodcast with myself, Jarvis, Todd, and my old buddy up there, Paul Skeldon, who's the editor-in-chief of all of our Telemedia publishing products, the magazine, the newsletter, the website, and he has been coming back recently he has been coming back from Amsterdam because, as you well know, the Telemedia conference season is upon us, kicking off in Amsterdam this week with the Carrier Billing Summit. And as I say, Paul has literally just got back. His bags are still not unpacked, but he is going to unpack for you some of the key takeaways from this opening event of the Telemedia season, as I said. So, hello, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Just literally straight back from the carrier billing event in Amsterdam, and my bags, as you say, are unpacked. But I learnt a lot. Busy couple of days. A lot of really interesting things come out of it.
Well, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about the key takeaways? Apparently, usually it wasn't focused entirely on billing and payments. There seemed to be quite a lot of references to content.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's there were some key themes emerged sort of very rapidly from the event. Obviously, a big chunk of it is dedicated to the kind of ins and outs of carrier billing. There was a lot of stuff on day two about sort of regulation and compliance and all those sort of sort of their important issues for it, more of which shortly. But the day one very much focused on really sort of how carrier billing is a much more sort of central and well-known part of the kind of content play across the industry. And what was particularly interesting was pretty much every presentation, every discussion centered on sort of key, really well-known brands whose content is being pushed out there through carrier billing. NBA, the National Basketball Association, APT, the tennis people, Liga Serie A, the Bundesliga. All of this is out there, as well as most of like the sort of main games that everybody knows and plays, Minecraft, Roblox, those sorts of things, all being pushed out there as that's the kind of content that's now sitting behind carrier billing or is using carrier billing within it to sort of buy and sell stuff. And I think that was, I think in some ways, because it was a conference, they're trying to big up sort of those big names, and especially sort of aggregators, networks who have those as clients, obviously want to sort of talk about it. But I think it has shown a marked change in our industry. It is really, really sort of a mainstream thing. I mean, the number of times sort of Netflix or other streaming services were mentioned, I lost count. I was going to count how many times people said Netflix, but I gave up because it was just sort of every other presenter. It was just constant. So I think this sort of move to mainstream content services using carrier billing is really sort of there. It's sort of completely cemented itself in the industry, and there's a whole load of new ones as well. There's EV charging, there's ticketing, there's public transport, there's bike hire, there's even insurance, and other sort of utility products. Because, of course, the people represented at the event were pretty much global. A lot of it was quite European focused. Again, another interesting point because there is a lot of development of new services using carrier billing in Europe. But obviously in Africa, in MENA, they're doing all sorts of really interesting things with it. I mean, for instance, you can buy a Burger King in Turkey now with carrier billing.
Is that right?
Sub
Wow.
franchises of Burger King in Turkey, you can use carrier billing to buy a burger. You can also use carrier billing to pay for your insurance. Um, you can buy software, you can download all sorts of things everywhere now using carrier billing. It was really, really fascinating, and exciting as well.
Well, I mean, of course, you and I have been talking up the telemedia industry in the wide variety of of applications for DCB for quite some time. And of course, we've seen huge growth in the World Telemedia shows, particularly the next one coming up in Marbella, as more consumers have been taking up DCB, VAS, premium content offers. And as we've seen the market, as you quite rightly say, moving away from traditionally quite a small number of sort of mainly entertainment-based products into a very, very wide-ranging set of premium content offers and services, and a variety of other applications, as you say. And as I said, I'm very proud to say that we've been documenting this for quite some time. So no real surprises there in terms of hearing people talking about the breadth of applications for the industry. Was the general sense upbeat, or
Yeah,
you mentioned compliance and regulation and fraud? That's obviously going to be discussed
yeah,
at
yeah.
some length. Are there big problems there that people are
Not
concerned about?
No, I mean, obviously, there's always with anything. I think with anything that involves sort of financial transactions, there's going to be fraud, but it's not. It's no more prevalent, I don't think, now in what we do than it is in any other sort of payment channel. And the mood was really upbeat. I mean, it was an audience sort of dedicated to carrier billing, so they're bound to be. But it just felt like it's really having a moment. And I mean, some stats that were sort of put out there by MEF itself from research that they've done that globally it's growing carrier billing at about 8% compound annual growth rate across the whole world. But in some markets, it's sort of like bombing along. France, you wouldn't probably expect France to be the market that's seen the biggest growth in carrier billing use, but it has 21% according to Orange France. MEF's data says 24%, but somewhere between 20 and 25% it seems to be growing in France. It's booming there. A lot of it is PSMS stuff to do with sort of competitions and voting and media interaction. That's having a moment in France, but it's really growing and they're really buoyant. You're talking to Orange France. We have a video interview which will be posted in the next week or so. They're really sort of upbeat about it. It's really sort of getting somewhere. Similarly, in Germany, there's 6 million people regularly using DCB as far as Democo are concerned. I suspect it's more. They're doing 150 million transactions, doing all sorts of things, and again, it's really starting to sort of gain some traction in Germany and Austria. And these are sort of mature, sort of mainstream markets. Of course, all that stuff was about the content and brands, the big brands doing the content stuff. A lot of that is OTT subscription services, but that's all running beautifully. Carrier billing sort of encourages more people to sign up to subs. A lot of the growth in these mature markets, also, it was sort of suggested to me, is the nature of putting it on a post-paid phone bill. So essentially, like your sort of contract phone. It's sort of being looked at as a buy now, pay later sort of approach by some people. So it's starting to sort of gather pace like that. So yes, it was very upbeat. I think there's an awful lot of opportunity. The people who spoke about the sort of more, I don't want to call them emerging markets because they're not. They're I guess sort of we have mature markets that have been around for years in Europe. We've got all these other markets that are more recently coming to this, but they're pretty like mature and evolved already in MENA, particularly, and sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia. That's booming out there. And they're using carrier billing to top up wallets so people can buy other stuff with their wallet. It's really lively. It's a lively sector.
That's interesting to hear. I mean, it's a great point you make about the European market, because I think we've become certainly a little bit obsessed with Africa and MENA, which is for good reason. But it's important not to forget that there are still some significant numbers being generated out of the European market, which again is probably one of the reasons why Marbella has gone from strength to strength over
Mm,
the last couple of years. But yeah, I remember last year actually, Orange France, think, took the stage at the DCB summit and were talking about similar successes that they'd had with media interactivity and PSMS. And it was refreshing to hear an MNO being so positive about the partnerships that they've forged with payment aggregators and telemedia merchants and service providers to create really successful services in France. And I suppose, that the proof's in the pudding. If you've, as we've said many times, if you've got a very supportive community of MNOs in a particular country, then the DCB market or DCB payments will thrive. And I think France is a great example of exactly that. So come on, MNOs.
Well,
Let's
that's an interesting point you make, because part of the success in Germany is down to the fact that the MNOs, as we've reported many times, cooperate on carrier billing, and it has an actual brand name, and it's a thing. A bit of a possibly breaking news, I think, that I picked up yesterday at the event is that it's likely to happen in the UK as well. We had a session with EE, Dynamic Mobile Billing, and AIM, where it sort of was kind of let slip when someone asked a question at the end, that they're going to try and revive the idea they had with Pay for It of having a brand for carrier billing, because they think they've got past some of the kind of stumbling blocks to the operators being able to cooperate enough to make that happen. So obviously, there's competition rules means they can't cooperate, because it then looks like a sort of closed shop, and that's sort of regulated in a very different way. They're not allowed to do that, but seemingly they are working towards and getting close to being able to have a branded name for carrier billing in the UK market, especially now Ofcom's new sort of code of practice is in place, and it's a much more simple and straightforward process now running carrier billing services. The operators are aligning their codes of practice and all that kind of thing. So it's all starting to come together in the UK market as well. I think possibly because they saw the success it's had in Germany.
And they don't want to leave money on the table
No,
ultimately.
quite. It's
Yeah.
there's a lot of money to be made from this.
So, talk about some of the. So, it can't have all have been good news. I mean, there's obviously some issues
Mm.
that were raised at the Carrier Billing Summit. What were the key takeaways in terms of things to look out for?
Issues there. Well, yeah, the usual sort of things. I mean, it's interesting because there are obviously challenges. There's always challenges with these things, regulation being one of them, and that sort of trying to get that cooperation, but amongst competitors. But they do seem to be very up for cooperating. The biggest thing that kept coming up, and well, this came up a few times in our Dubai event, and it was mentioned in Marbella last year, is this idea that carrier billing is sort of somehow being undermined by people buying bundles of data rather than sort of call minutes. So they're not able to use carrier billing because they can't sort of translate what they've spent on data into buying sort of goods and services. However, I mean, what a lot of the people there from the MNOs were saying is that it's just two different kinds of looking ways of looking at billing. It's either plain billing, which is like your normal stuff, which makes DCB work very easily, or there's bundling and bundled billing, and they sort of operate almost separately. And that, asked point blank, several of the operators, I've said I wouldn't name names, all said that no, this isn't an issue.
Right. Okay.
So who knows? I can't see how it can't be, because I think there is some sort of degree of it eroding how DCB works. Plus, there are, which is another issue, all the other payment tools that are out there, which definitely eat into how carrier billing can be used.
How was that?
Yeah.
How was that presented in Amsterdam?
Well, it was presented as
As a
sort of like
threat
carrier billing is a billing tool, and there's lots of billing tools, and really, as the old sort of adage used to be with sort of gambling websites years ago, is that the more ways you offered people to pay, the more people would spend money. And I think they're sort of floating that as the idea that carrier billing fits in to this. People will use whichever billing tool depending on what they want to do and how they're doing it, how they've been marketed to. Carrier billing still has this huge advantage that it's very, very easy and seamless for the user. It has the disadvantage, the perceived disadvantage, really, that it costs more money. Though increasingly, brands are prepared to swallow that cost because they get so many more users.
Yeah.
So, and those sort of payout rates in lots of these mature markets are sort of getting better. So it's a much more, it's much more competitive. It's not as competitive as a credit card, but its advantages, seamlessness, etc., often outweigh that cost they're prepared to pay for it. So that is also starting to sort of like filter through and shape how this market works, really.
Well, I'm talking of markets. What about marketing?
Yeah.
I noticed that there was some discussions around Google and the ever-changing policies from that
Yes.
part of the industry.
Well, there's an issue is that I mean, obviously, sort of traffic generation is a big part of this. I mean, and really, I mean, as we all know, it's split into content, payments, and traffic generation, and those three things have to work in harmony. And you can use, I mean, in combinations. But there's a problem in that Google has a whole set of rules about how things are marketed. And MNOs have a whole other set of rules about how they, I guess, well, not it's not how the services are marketed, but how the services are described and how they have to be described to fit in with the MNO's codes of conduct. And the two things aren't always necessarily compatible. And so Google, when you set up sort of to try and generate traffic for a new service, it goes through all that sort of stuff using AI. And if it's not written in the right way or doesn't appear prominently enough or all manner of very minor things, it won't advertise that service because it's not compliant with Google's rules. So the MNO rules and the Google rules don't match up, and this is causing a sort of issue because of a lot of it's done through programmatic advertising, so it's all automated, and it's trying to align those two things is a challenge, I think.
And how is that likely to happen? Is it likely to happen?
Well, I think so. I think it's one of those things that just needs a discussion where they decide that okay, this is what Google is looking for. We just need to word stuff in this way. Because interestingly, another thing which is something I've done a big piece on that's going to be in our next magazine that's out in a few weeks' time is that sort of while search traffic is a great way of, sort of driving eyeballs to services, as is social media, increasingly people are putting into Google or into an AI, like what's the best, and the way that finds stuff is very, very different to how a search engine works. And what's happening is that, again, the way the descriptions of services are written, and particularly all their compliance information, if it's not written in the right way, the AI can't find it or can't make sense of it, so it doesn't surface it. So perfectly legitimate services may not come up for you. Go, what is the best sort of place to find MBA stats? It might not find the right services if their sort of T's and C's and their compliance stuff isn't written in exactly the right way. There's nothing wrong with what they've done. It's just not working for AI. And Google, the way Google is looking for information to surface things through search is the same problem.
Right.
So I think it's something that's becoming very rapidly a very well-known issue in the industry, both on the advertising Google side and the AI side and the content side. I
Right.
think they need to
Well,
just work together to refine and standardize how things are mentioned and described.
yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, it's good to know that in Marbella, on the 5th, 6th, and 7th of October, there's going to be quite a lot of conference time dedicated to this particular area, and I'm delighted to see that we've got a couple of representatives from Google, which
Yeah,
will no doubt be of huge interest and great benefit to the telemedia delegates that are heading down to Marbella. And again, I think those sessions are run in conjunction with Meshads, who I see on
yeah,
LinkedIn have been spending a lot of time down at the Google offices
yeah,
trying to navigate this particular issue, and no doubt I would expect to hear some positive noises coming from those sessions and from both those companies with regards to how these issues are being tackled in favour of successful telemedia marketing services. What else do we need to talk about? I mean, we mentioned Google. I guess TikTok was probably
Yeah, social media.
well.
TikTok has now like risen to the top as the social media site pretty much globally. To if you're going to use social media to drive traffic, TikTok's the place to go. The challenge with TikTok, which also applies to sort of Instagram and all the others, really, but more so for TikTok, is that sort of content-based advertising. So like, putting up interesting stuff to make people click through and then sort of, pay has to be refreshed so regularly. It has to be, almost daily, which is a massive challenge. I mean, obviously AI can help you create, endless sort of variations of the content. But I think that's something to watch. We're all very reliant already on AI, and AI constantly it is going to start to enter, introduce glitches and problems, or not run out of ideas, but it'll keep slicing and dicing things until it maybe gets a little absurd. So there is that potential problem that you've got to be aware of. How do you keep your creative going on such a sort of regularly updated sort of way, which is a challenge with marketing on social media. It's a challenge of doing anything on social media these days. So that was an interesting point. I think that again, we'll be addressing in Marbella. I'm trying to get people together to talk more specifically about the creative side of it and how you do that for search engines, how you do that for social, how you do that for AI discoverability. And because I think that's a really hot topic. We all know how to do sort of Google marketing. What we don't know is how to do the next stage of this, which, it moves so fast. 6 months' time, this is going to be really important.
Well, I mean, that brings us nicely onto Marpo. I mean, if you do need the answers to these questions, if
Mm.
you do need to share your thoughts and experiences with other key players in the telemedia industry, then absolutely everybody that's worth talking to will be in Marbella on the 5th, 6th, and 7th of October. So please go to wtevent.com and you can register to go to the show. Paul, what I'd really like to know is what have you got covering in the conference over the course of the next event?
Well, it's going to do what telemedia does best, and is to bring together those three elements of content, payments, and marketing. And so we'll be looking at those separately. So we'll be looking at the sort of more detailed things around billing and payments and carrier billing, and discussing in more detail these issues, plus sort of the alternative ways of payments and what that means, how you integrate them. We'll also be looking at the kinds of content that are really driving this. Uncovering not just how these mainstream brands are, because all the good stuff that it's always been built on is still going, and that's still important and still generates a lot of revenue. How do we slice and dice that? I've talked about how we use AI to create endless sort of iterations of content, particularly for marketing, but the content itself. And we'll be looking at the marketing side of it, how you pull these things together, what your strategies should be, with working with search engines, not just Google, but all the other search engines that are out there. How you work with social media sites, how you work with AI discoverability, how those things all work together. So we're going to do those as individual subjects where we can really drill into the sort of nuts and bolts of how they work. And we're also going to intersperse that with looking at specific markets and how those things plus fraud and regulation are shaping up in MENA region, sub-Saharan Africa, and Europe, because we're going to pull in some people to talk about these things in Europe, because as we said at the top of this vodcast, Europe is now having a bit of a moment. It's all sort of got some exciting and quite interesting incremental developments is the thing. It's a market that keeps growing, not rapidly, not massively, but it's innovative, and it's still got legs.
Yeah, no, agreed. So, well, thank you very much for giving us a summary on the Global Carrier Billing Summit, which I guess was a nice sort of entree, as I said earlier,
Yeah.
to the Telemedia conference season. But of course, the big one is coming up. So
Yeah.
do, as I said earlier, go to wtevent.com, get yourself registered. Of course, the earlier you do that, the sooner people will start contacting you and setting up those meetings, the sooner you can start to make your plans with regards to which conference sessions are going to answer the questions that you've got burning currently in your own commercial strategies. And also, as I say, there are probably in excess of 700 key people that will all be in Marbella looking to exchange ideas, looking to do
Yeah.
business on site. It really is the big one until, of course, Barcelona and then Dubai next year, which we'll be talking about a little bit later on. So until the next time, I think, which will be in Marbella, we're going to say thank you.
No, we've got no, we've,
Oh,
we've
we've got
got
one more. We've got one
we've
more.
got one, at least one in between, I think.
Okay. So
But yes,
we'll be previewing. We'll be previewing in a bit more
yeah,
detail who you can expect to hear from in Marbella. And as I say, by that time you should have already got your plans in place, and we look forward to seeing you there. So in the meantime, Paul, you need to go and do your washing and get
yeah,
back to work. So thanks very much for your
absolutely.
time.
I have a magazine and a conference to get together.
Exactly, not much to do then. So thanks very much, and thanks everyone for watching. Just remember, please like and subscribe, and you will receive regular updates on when Paul and I will be covering the news from the telemedia industry for your delight and and to hopefully help you navigate these choppy and complicated and challenging, but nevertheless very exciting waters. So until next time, see you later on. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.